Shmup in the Bible, the Book of Daniel. Cecil B. DeShmup here with another edition of Shmup in the Bible. Chances are you've heard this roaring good tale. Hey, roaring, because Lion's Den? No? Well, moving on. So Daniel lived in a time when things weren't going so hot for the Jewish people. The Babylonians had recently invaded their homeland and they were scattered all over the place. Well, Daniel has three good buds, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yikes. Yeah, imagine trying to spell those names in elementary school. Anyway, they're all well-educated guys who end up serving in the palace of King Nebuchadnezzar. Well, one night, the king has a terrible dream. Probably the one where he's naked in front of his kingdom again. So embarrassing. Anyway, good old Nebi calls in all of his wise men and is like, "Hey, y'all are wise. Can you figure out the meaning of the dream I just had? Oh, and I'm not going to tell you what the dream was, so you can do that too. Cool, go for it." Yep, you heard me. He wants them to tell him his own dream. Oh, and he's going to tear them all limb from limb if they can't do it. Super reasonable fella, right? Well, the wise men are all like, "What is happening right now? Are we dreaming? Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy, caught in a landslide, no escape from reality?" Sorry, that was my go-to karaoke song. It sure didn't work there, did it? Go to reality. All right, moving on. But they're unfortunately very much awake. The wise men start freaking out and presumably start guessing stuff like, "Did you start a folk band with Beyonce in outer space?" And the king is like, "What? That's absolutely ridiculous. Beyonce's too cool to start a folk band with me." Not that I'm saying Beyonce has been around since biblical times, but I'm not saying that either. Anyway, the wise men can't figure it out, and the king is like, "Yeah, lol, only a god could do this, sorry not sorry." And he orders all the wise men to be put to death. Yeah. All right, and even though Daniel wasn't around for the dream interpretation, he's arrested with the rest of the wise men. But because Daniel isn't too keen on dying just yet, he's like, "Okay, this whole situation is kind of crazy, but put me in, coach. Let me try figuring it out." Well, he prays to God who lets him in on old Nebi's dream as well as what it means. So Daniel heads back to Nebi and is like, "So God gave me the inside scoop. You dreamt of this giant statue of a human. He had a gold head, silver chest and arms. His thighs and stomach were bronze. His legs were iron, and his feet were iron and clay. But get this, the statue is destroyed, and the stone that destroyed it is turned into a giant mountain that covers the entire earth." And Nebi's like, "That's some Big Brother stuff you just did, but okay, what does it all mean?" So Danny Boy tells him what each part of the statue symbolizes, that the kingdom will eventually be divided, and that the stone symbolizes the kingdom of God, which will annihilate all the other kingdoms and permanently replace them, standing for all time. And Nebi's like, "I thought I was just dreaming about some weird Power Rangers episode or something." But he's pretty impressed and gives Daniel a big promotion, making him the ruler of the province of Babylon. He also praises Daniel's God and is like, "Wow, this guy is clearly the God of gods. If he could figure out my trippy Power Rangers dream, yeah." All right, but things are never this easy, and we're about to run into a little trouble. Surprise, surprise. Old Nebi was impressed with Daniel's God, yes, but he also thinks pretty highly of himself. So he does what any rational person would do. He builds himself a giant gold statue and forces everyone to bow down and worship it. Oh, do rational people not do that? Oh, hang on. At Shmup here, we got to cancel a sculptor we just hired for no reason. Well, unfortunately, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are seen not bowing down to the statue because they refuse to worship anyone but God. Well, as you can imagine, this does not sit too well with the king. His totally rational response? Throw them in a furnace that's been heated to 7 times its normal temperature. Well, we suppose Nebi wanted to, fire them. Well, in a shocking twist, Shad, Mesh, and Gogo are completely unharmed in the furnace. Yeah, like that scene from Game of Thrones where it goes in the... And the king sees a fourth person, possibly an angel, in the flames with them. Old Nebi is even more impressed with the Jewish God and outlaws any blasphemy against him, or else, you guessed it, offenders would be torn limb from limb. This guy and his limb tearing. Well, you'd think the king would bow down to God at this point, but he really wants that sculpture made. So God is like, enough of this, and punishes him by turning him mad and sending him out into the wilderness for 7 years. Sounds like every camping trip we've ever been on. Apparently, old Nebi is able to restore himself by praising God and returns to being king after 7 years. I feel like the Babylonians should have had some reservations about that, but well, what do we know here? Anyway, Nebi doesn't mess up anymore and ends his reign without throwing any more people in furnaces.
Nice.
After the Babylonians come the Persians, and even though we've got a new king in the mix, King Darius, Daniel is still just doing his thing, interpreting dreams and signs and being a cool advisor, the usual. But he's so trusted that King Darius' other advisors start to get jealous, and they trick the king into proclaiming that for a 30-day period, anyone who doesn't worship him will be thrown into a lion's den. Oh, remember that excellent roar pun I made at the beginning of this? Well, if you say no, you're a lion. Anyway, now we're getting to the good stuff. Daniel's oblivious and keeps worshiping God like always. He is arrested, and even though Darius doesn't want to throw him to the lions, the other advisors are like, hey, rules are rules. So good to see all these kings have, such strong backbones. Way to go, guys. Anyway, before he tosses him in the lion's den, Darius tells Daniel he hopes his God will save him. And guess what? In a completely unexpected twist that I'm sure no one saw coming, that's exactly what happens. God sends an angel to keep the lion's mouth shut, and Daniel comes out the next day without a scratch, and with brunch plans for next Sunday with his new lion pal. Darius is happy to see him alive and well and decides to punish the conspirators by throwing them, their wives, and their children to the lions. No angels show up this time, and the kids learn that Disney movies don't always tell the truth. I'm not saying the Lion King existed back then, but the Bible doesn't say that it didn't exist, so Well, the rest of the book deals with Daniel interpreting dreams and having visions of the end of time, as well as speaking with angels. Some trippy stuff. The book ends with angels telling Daniel to go and rest, and he will receive his reward at the end of days. Daniel's like, Hakuna Matata, what a wonderful thing. Yeah, like that. And he just goes take a nap. And that's how the book of Daniel ends. Okay, well, maybe it doesn't end with a nap, but I'm pretty sure it does end with a rousing rendition of Hakuna Matata. Well, join me for next time for the 12 Minor Prophets. One of them may or may not be Beyonce. What a cliffhanger.